Chapter 5, Variations in Consciousness. This is Lecture 2. Basic questions we're going to be addressing in this lecture. What do people typically dream about? Are there age differences in REM sleep patterns? Why do we dream? What is hypnosis? Is it really an altered state of consciousness or something else? Here's a question for you. How do you know you're not dreaming right now? Could it be that you're asleep and dreaming this? How do you know the difference between your waking life and your dream life? The answer is most people report that they're not able to do things in waking life, ordinary waking life, that they can do sometimes in their dreaming lives. So we have learned over our developmental history to separate out those kind of experiences that are probably not dreaming and those kinds of experiences that are probably dreaming, so we can discriminate between the two states of awareness, which is a good thing, because if you are unable to discriminate between being in a dream state and a waking state, there's probably something going on. So in this section, we're going to be looking at dreaming and some other sleep-related phenomenon, such as dream content and that sort of thing. And then we'll look at hypnosis. So for now, consider this. Have you ever been chased by somebody or something in a dream? Have you ever had trouble taking a test or performing on stage in a dream? Have you ever been naked or inappropriately dressed in public? Have you ever been lost, trapped, stuck, or paralyzed in a dream? If you said yes to any of these, then you're pretty much like everybody else. Dream content is something that is shared across individuals. Being chased and being trapped are the most common sorts of dreams that are people report as being fairly uncomfortable. But these are very common types of dreams and dream content that people report. I would have to suggest that probably being chased is associated with anxiety. Maybe something's going on during your regular waking life, and so you're incorporating that situation, an anxiety-producing situation, into your dream life, and you're experiencing that anxiety while you're dreaming. Dream content, there's individuals that study dream content. Dream content is self-centered. That is, usually we're the star of our own show. We appear in our dreams. That's commonly reported. Common themes include sex, anxiety, aggression. So Freud was right, so to speak, that there's these events that are occurring during our waking life that we may be incorporating into our dream life. But mostly the content of dreams is fairly mundane. Boring, everyday stuff. Freud's day residue gets back to these themes of sex, anxiety, and aggression. So think of day residue as us having maybe situations in our waking life that are anxiety producing, or maybe we have sexual desire for somebody that's inaccessible to us, or we have feelings of aggression towards somebody that we can't act on. And so what do we do with that? Well, those are all powerful motivations, right? Sexual motivation, motivation to aggress. So what do we do with all that energy? Well, we stuff it, and then sure enough, it surfaces during our dream life. When we're sort of freed up from the rules and regulations of waking life, we can do whatever we want in our dreams, right? So that stuff is buried during the day, and then it into our unconscious during the day, and then it becomes conscious through our dreams at night. So that's day residue. So dream content includes these sort of common themes: sex, anxiety, aggression, but by and large, dreams are pretty mundane. Some developmental differences in dreaming and REM. So newborns, when you bring them home, around 50% of the time they're in REM sleep. So little babies are spending a lot of time in REM sleep. And then this falls off. Later on, as adults, we're spending about 20 to 25% of sleep in REM. And then stays fairly stable as we age. However, we see in older adults a decrease in the time spent in slow wave sleep. So these stages of sleep stay the same, but the times that we spend in each stage changes as we age. Kids have few well-developed dreams before age 9. So, and of course this will vary from child to child, but generally speaking, kids aren't able to really articulate their dreams very well prior to age 9. So if you ask a 4-year-old what they dreamt about, you're probably not going to get a very coherent story. But if you ask a 13-year-old, that person will go on and on and on, or they can go. They have the potential to go on and on and on about their dreams in great detail. Adults are dreaming about 4 to 6 times per night, so everybody dreams. You might know somebody, or maybe even yourself, that says, I never dream. But the fact is that we are dreaming. However, we're forgetting about 90 to 99% of dreams. So a lot of the dreaming that we do, we just simply don't recall. In fact, the only way that we can recall dreams is if we wake up a little bit during the night. And we do this as we're cycling through the stages of sleep. We'll achieve a modest state of consciousness and awareness as we're cycling through those stages. And at that time, we encode the dreams into memory. So recall of a dream involves us having a bit of time to rehearse the dream content. And we might not remember ourselves rehearsing, but we achieve a state of consciousness such that we can rehearse that dream content and essentially form a memory code for it. But by and large, we're forgetting most of our dreams. So consider this. In your dreams, have you ever done superhuman things, fly and so forth? Personally, I have. I love those kind of flying dreams. I always kind of regret waking up from those because I realize that I'm sort of bound by gravity here in my waking life, but in my dreams I can do these incredible things at times. 2, has a dream ever helped you create something or solve a problem? So some people might fall asleep struggling with a problem, either school or relationship or something, and then you wake up and you've got it. You've got the answer. So if you've answered yes to either of these, it could be that this is reflecting a functionality of dreams of sorts. That, for example, if we're able to solve a problem in a dream, then that serves a particular function. So some of the theories of dreaming, why we dream, maybe dreams matter to some extent. Everybody dreams, and if you buy in again to this theory of evolution, maybe dreams had some sort of purpose. So we're going to look at 3 theories of dreaming. The first one is Freud's wish fulfillment theory, and what Freud's wish fulfillment theory pertains to is that during our waking life, we have these ungratified needs, and I mentioned a couple of them earlier. That is, I might be sexually motivated, attracted to somebody who's otherwise off limits, or maybe they're inaccessible to me, but yet I still have this desire. I might have a need to aggress against somebody, maybe a sort of a horrible boss that I'm in conflict with, but it would cost me my job if I actually confronted that individual. So that's a lot of energy. What do we do with it? Well, we bury it during our waking life, and then it surfaces in our dreams. And in our dreams, we're freed up from these rules and boundaries and so forth, and we can therefore fulfill these unconscious desires, satisfy those wishes that we have during our waking life. Rosalind Cartwright, who you can see here in the red, she and her colleagues came up with the problem-solving function of dream, and quite simply that is during dreams. We're freed up from logic and reason that we're bound by in our waking life, and that supports creative thinking, divergent thinking, if you want to call it that, thinking outside the box about everyday problems. And history is full of stories of individuals who have been struggling with various problems, and they've gone to sleep and they woke up, eureka, I've got it. For example, the German chemist Kekulé was struggling with trying to discover the molecular structure of the element benzene. Benzene was an important component in the dye industry, and this is back prior to 1900. And so Kekulé was struggling with this. He dozed off and he dreamt of 3 snakes, each one having the tail of the one in front of it in its mouth, and such that these snakes formed a ring. And he woke up and he said, that's it. The shape of the benzene molecule is a ring. And sure enough, he was right. And then the last one here, Hobson and Macauley's activation synthesis model. So Hobson and Macauley suggests that dreaming is merely the cortex processing these random subcortical firings. So your brain is active during sleep, both at the level of the cortex, and that's the part of the brain that is responsible for higher order thinking and cognitive processes and making sense of the world and all that. And then you have the lower parts of the brain, these subcortical areas like the limbic system and the hypothalamus, that are responsible for the more appetitive functions, mating and eating and so forth. And so those brain areas are active as well. And so your cortex is just doing its job, making sense of those neural impulses that are being fired off below the level of the cortex. So the brain, the cortex, pieces together this information into what it believes is a coherent story, right? And essentially that's what we're doing as perceiving and sensing individuals during our waking life. We're receiving information from our senses, and then we're sort of piecing together the story of reality. And so you can think of the cortex as just doing what it ordinarily does. So we can use each one of these theories of dreaming to help us sort of explain why it is that we dream. Dream myths. Can you die when you dream? The answer is probably not. So this myth of, if I dream that I die in my dream, does that mean I'll actually die? There's no evidence to suggest this. By the way, how would you know if somebody dies that they died because of a dream that they had? It's unfalsifiable. You cannot know. Only way that you might know is if you die in your dream and then you don't actually die, and that would sort of disprove the myth that you die. If you actually die when you die in your dream. So anyway, there's no truth to that. Can dreams predict the future? And I need to differentiate between contemporary Western culture from other cultures. Certainly other cultures use dreams. And I'm thinking of, for example, the Punan Dayak people of Kalimantan or Borneo down in Indonesia. Certainly this is a culture that believes that dreams have the ability to help us foresee into the future. In fact, some cultures will organize certain behaviors around dreams, dreams of shamans, and so forth, and use that as actionable information to help them make decisions and so forth about the future. However, in mainstream Western society, like American culture, it's generally believed that dreams are not accurate or reliable predictors of future events. Do dream images mean anything? Now, this is a tricky one, because there's so much out there on dream interpretation, trying to make sense of dream imagery and so forth. Freud's one of Freud's most influential works was the interpretation of dreams, where he discusses dream imagery in his work, dream work, with his clients. But there is actually no good scientific evidence to suggest that dream images mean the same thing to everybody. That is, there is no real universal meaning to dream imagery. So if you have a dream and you dream of being chased by a bear, for example, and you go to a website and try to figure out what this dream means, you might get a whole host of answers about what this sort of imagery means. And the fact is that the important question is, what does it mean to you? If you're having this dream of being chased by a bear, what feelings do you have surrounding that? What sort of thoughts do you have surrounding that experience of being chased by a bear, rather than what does it universally mean to everybody everywhere? Concept check. According to Freud, the function of dreaming is A, problem solving, B, to make sense of random neural impulses, C, wish fulfillment, D, none of the above. Answer is C, wish fulfillment. All right, so I want to transition here to a brief discussion of hypnosis. My hunch is that most of you have heard of this. The question really is it a true altered state of consciousness, or is it something other than that? Entertainment is one of the areas that hypnosis is used, so my guess is, again, that some of you have seen hypnosis conducted in an entertainment setting. So these hypnotists that come often maybe to high school students and so forth, or these shows in Las Vegas where you have a hypnotist bringing people up on stage, and then they do kind of crazy things. Medicine, it's used in the treatment of certain disorders, smoking and weight loss. It's also used in some instances as a substitute for anesthetic. There are individuals who cannot, for one reason or another, tolerate anesthetic, either general or local. So what do you do with these individuals? Hypnosis can be an option. So there are individuals who have undergone painful procedures such as skin grafts after burns or root canals, for dental work, for example, in the absence of anesthetic. And what's helped them through this is being hypnotized. So there's hypnosis used in entertainment contexts and also in medical contexts. So it's clear it's out there. Hypnosis requires what's called an induction procedure. And there's literally tens, if not hundreds, of these procedures that will induce a state of hypnosis. So what's happening in a state of hypnosis once you've been inducted? So hypnotic phenomena include relaxation. That is, there's a overwhelming sense of tremendous relaxation. Focused attention. So often an induction procedure will involve focusing on a particular thing. So the pendulum induction procedure is sort of one of the classic ones where the hypnotized subject is asked to focus on a swinging pendulum. And so the attention is focused, relaxation is induced, and what this creates is what's called a heightened sense of suggestibility. That is, think of suggestibility as your preparedness to receive and act upon the directives of another person. And this varies. Some people are more suggestible than others. That is, there's some people that can sort of give themselves away, so to speak, and who are quite prepared to receive the directives of another individual and then act on those directives, whereas other people are not suggestible at all, and therefore probably not very good subjects for hypnosis. Enhanced fantasy. So this is, and we can refer to the entertainment context, that is, you see people up there being hypnotized and then being directed to do sort of crazy things, jump around, act like a chicken, and so forth. And so this is supported by enhanced fantasy, that you're so relaxed and focused and suggestible that you're freed up from the ordinary inhibitions that guide your ordinary behavior. And so by being freed up from those inhibitions, you can sort of become anything, do anything, so forth. So these are typical hypnotic phenomena. But what is hypnosis really? And here we get back to the the subject at hand, which is consciousness. Is it truly this sort of other state of consciousness, of awareness, or is it something other than that? So we're going to look at two theories, Barber and Spanos's role-playing theory, and then Ernest Hilgard's altered state or dissociative theory. So these are the two theories of hypnosis. So let's look at Barber and Spanos's role-playing theory first. So what Barber and Spanos suggest is hypnosis is a normal state of consciousness. That is, when we see somebody behaving in a particular way under a state of hypnosis, it's because of their understanding of the way that hypnotized people are supposed to act. So these individuals are relaxed and focused, and they act out this role of the hypnotized subject. And I want to qualify this to some extent. Some roles individuals play, they lose themselves in the role. So this is not simply just sort of acting. It's rather being in a state of mind such that you become the role that you're being asked to play, which is a very, very sort of powerful place to be in. But yet there isn't a true altered state of consciousness, but rather sort of an intense engagement in a particular role. Evidence in support of role-playing theory is that people that aren't hypnotized can do things that seemingly are presented as being possible only under a state of hypnosis. So we've got an image down here, the human plank. So the human plank is one of these things that a hypnotized subject will do, and then we're all supposed to be amazed, because how is it that a person can keep their body so rigid like this without being hypnotized? But the fact is that this is something that people can do without actually having to be hypnotized. So we've got the role-playing theory, and then we have Ernest Hilgard's altered state or dissociation theory. And what Hilgard suggests is that hypnosis truly is this unique altered state of consciousness. In that hypnosis, that induction into a hypnotic state creates what's called dissociation. In essence, this is a splitting off of mental processes into two separate simultaneous streams of awareness. And my example for this is, and we'll just use an ordinary everyday example of dissociation that hasn't been induced by hypnosis, and this is highway hypnosis. That is, if you've ever had the experience of getting in a car and driving home maybe, and then arriving home without any recollection of how you got there. So your brain or your mind was sort of split off. Maybe you were daydreaming and so forth as you were driving along, such that your body almost sort of behaved automatically. You weren't aware that you got on the highway or the freeway and took exits and stopped and started and so forth. Your mind was somewhere else, so to speak. I believe probably this was happening as well. Here's another example with Mr. Fogus, my sophomore year high school creative writing teacher. I believe that in Vietnam he was dissociating. That is, his consciousness was splitting off to help him cope with traumatic circumstances. So there can be a defensive dissociation as well that helps us sort of survive in particularly traumatic situations. So this sort of splitting of consciousness can be induced through hypnosis. And this is what Hilgard is saying, is that hypnosis is this splitting off of consciousness into two different streams of awareness. So evidence that that hypnosis is a unique altered state comes from studies in which patients have undergone these otherwise horrifically painful procedures in the absence of anesthetic. Now, if we buy into the role-playing theory, the question becomes, how could somebody role-play not experiencing horrific pain? So what this suggests is that people under hypnosis are able to separate out one stream of consciousness such that they're not experiencing pain from the other part of their consciousness that's populating their body, so to speak. So this is dissociation theory that suggests that hypnosis can induce this truly altered state of awareness, splitting off of mental processes. So at this point, there's really no resolution between the two opposing theories. Certainly we can say that in some instances, hypnosis involves hypnotized subjects sort of acting out the roles of hypnotized subjects, and in some cases, in medical applications, we can say that possibly there's a true altered state going on here. So there's some probably combination of the two that can be applied to various circumstances in which people are hypnotized. We do know that hypnosis is used successfully in the treatment of some problems. Quitting smoking, weight loss, pain, and so forth. People can use self-hypnosis and be induced by a therapist to help them sort out these issues, and certainly it's been used in instances where people cannot tolerate anesthetic. Learning objectives. Describe the developmental differences in REM sleep and dreaming, the 3 theories of dreaming covered in the chapter, and the findings on typical dream content. Describe hypnotic induction and list some prominent effects of hypnosis. Compare and contrast the role-playing and altered state theories of hypnosis. And then we have a red font objective. Describe some cultural variations and beliefs about the nature and importance of dreams. You'll have to read about those in your text.